So let's get started previewing the race officially. And Kyle Larson is the favorite. Before we get into the drivers and our analysis, our total number of picks that we have all equally picked. Who would that be? We used to have like 5 or 6 a race.
Yeah.
And then
where are we down to?
Yeah, we're down to like 1 or 2 every week now. And
it's been 1 the last few.
We have 2.
2 this week. I was gonna be my guess was 2. I'm gonna say Truex.
Correct.
And Byron.
Correct. 2 for 2.
All right, 2 for 2.
There you go. So, yeah. A lot of it is because, as I've said before, too, during this stretch, I think it's mainly because I've stayed away so much from a lot of the favorites that the odds were so low, and I've kind of avoided them. But here you go. As an example that out of the top, because I think we could say, even though Byron has 8-1 odds, just like Elliott and Hamlin, that if it was an order, it would be Larson, Kyle, Truex, and then Byron. Byron would have to be the top 8-1. So basically, I've gone with 2 of the top 4 drivers, and I don't usually do that in this stretch, which is probably why we finally, we have 2. But the other thing is CJ does not have. He only has 1 driver past 11-1, and nobody past 16-1. You only have, which is surprising, but we kind of talked about it. You only have 1 driver past 11-1.
Yep.
So let's start with the favorite. So Larson, again, same thing. I've avoided him pretty much for the most part during this stretch, but this was a race I was really close thinking of taking him. And how can you not think of that? Because of the fact that he dominated it the first time a couple years back, leading 264 of 300 laps. Solid again last year. But the thing that just, once again, it's just, he did not have good, and we should note that if you want to take a look at tracks that are the most similar, you look at Darlington and Dover, he didn't fare well, had issues in those races. And those are the types of issues that we've kind of talked about, that he's just so inconsistent right now that it's just hard for me to take him at 5-1 with all these inconsistencies. But yeah, this was a week I was really close to taking him.
Yeah, and like I said, he led all but 36 laps in 2021, 4th last year. And I also looked on paper, it shows Dover was 32nd place finish and Darlington a 20th place finish. But if you remember in Dover, he had a fast car. He was coming, but that was the first thing that kind of sparked the Rick Hendrick thing with Chastain and Larson, when Chastain was over-aggressive and punted Brendan Poole lap car out of the way, and Poole spun right up into the Larson. Larson had nowhere to go. But he had a good car before that. Darlington, Larson had that thing won. Then that caution came out inside the 20 to go while he was running away with it. He had a couple of right race restarts. He was good. And then Chastain was too aggressive, 6 to go, wrecked Larson again. So if he doesn't get wrecked by Chastain having a hand in both those wrecks, he easily could have won both of those races. So it might be a different story right now. So I thought 5-1, he was good at both tracks, dominated 2021 at this race. And it's not like he was bad last year. He was 4th. So I thought probably deserving 5-1. I'll go his direction.
John texted while you were giving your take in the chat area. I responded. John, by the way, mentioned that the 1 car is his favorite driver.
There we go.
So
I like it.
My response basically was I wanted to find out from John, because this is new, who was his favorite driver before.
Yeah.
Because Chastain is basically a 1-year guy last year. It's not like I can't imagine, John, that you were a Chastain favorite before last year. That would have been crazy, unless you're related to him. But That's maybe it was Kyle Busch, because if he likes Ross Chastain, you would think maybe he's a Kyle Busch guy.
He kind of reminds me of that kind of where it's my wife got in. The reason Kyle Busch was her favorite because she would watch one of those NASCAR top 10 shows. I was watching in bed one night several years ago, and like the top 10 bad boys in NASCAR, they call it. And Kyle was right after Earnhardt or vice versa. They were right there. And she's like, why does everybody love Dale Earnhardt but hate Kyle Busch, but they're the same basically person? And with all the boos, she's like, I'm going to cheer for that guy then. I'll be his fan. And then now she's like mad that everybody is now starting to like him. Like, well, what's going on? So Chastain could be that guy. And I think he's great for the sport. I wish he didn't get slowed down, which we talked about a few weeks ago, was that's what made Ross Chastain was his aggression and his he's got talent, and he had to race that way to get to this point. And I get you are at this point now, but don't stop. He could be that next polarizing, either you love him or hate him type driver, and he doesn't seem to care if people hate him. He's a really nice guy. In fact, a good story about your driver here at Daytona 2 years ago. I'm walking. This is the 500. This is the Friday, so not the duels day. It was the Friday right before the truck race. I'm FaceTiming my kids, and I'm walking around the garage, and I didn't have my headphones plugged in, and I'm walking this way, and I'm just kind of showing them the lay of the land. And they go, that's Ross Chastain. And he heard them over because he was kind of standing to the side. I kid you not. He walked over to me and had me FaceTime him. He wanted to talk to him.
Really?
It shows you how nice of a guy. Yep, this was last February. Not this past February, but February before. So, an extremely nice guy. So I FaceTimed him back, and of course they when they saw Ross was on the other end, they started fighting with each other to see who could hold the phone. So a little embarrassed, like, hey, I'll take that phone back. Sorry about that. But he's like, oh, yeah, I got a brother too. We used to that kind of stuff. But a good little story about Ross.
That's cool.
How nice of a guy he is.
Yeah.
But, yeah. If I wasn't in this position, because I don't have favorites, I just like all the good stories, and he'd be one of them. He's a really good guy, and I think he's a hell of a talent.
Well, John said the reason is because he just started to pick up the sport last year.
Perfect.
Basically, because NASCAR became or sports you could bet in his state. Now I don't know what state you were in, where you could start wagering. I know a lot of these states have now opened up for wagering in sporting events. I get that. And I agree with John as far as it being a very good, he says best sport, and I tell this story every several months or so, or at least every year, because you always get new viewers and such, that same thing happened to me. The reason I got hooked was because I had a sponsor on my radio show that was Roadhouse Grill. They were real popular back then, back in 2000. And the connection was Budweiser with the restaurants, and the Budweiser rep was a big NASCAR fan. And so part of the whole deal for them to spend more money with us so we could have a show and they could sponsor it and we could do the shows at Roadhouse Grill was that he was also going to come on and be like the NASCAR analyst. So it was a lot of fun. We had great times. I traveled to like 5 or 6 different tracks, including Daytona and Charlotte and Florida tracks, everything. And but the first one was the NASCAR race. It was the 4th of July race, I believe.
Oh,
I'm not sure if it was Pepsi the 500.
It'd be Daytona. It'd be the Pepsi 400. 4th of July.
I think it was the Pepsi 400 then. Yes, pretty sure that was it. And Dale Jarrett won. So whatever that one was, back around 2000. Yep.
I'd say you're probably talking the year 2000 or 01, right around that.
And we had a raffle. And you get to pick a driver, and whoever wins. And I picked, and I had Dale Jarrett. And so I'm like now following Jarrett around the track, rooting for him, and that's how I got hooked. And then all of a sudden I started, once I started learning and asking him like hundreds of questions, I was that guy that just I had a question for everything. And so that was a lot of fun. And then I got hooked, and then ever since I've been wagering on NASCAR. So Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr., 7-1. So we both, you and I, well, we all did. We all took Truex. CJ took Kyle. And I just figured, especially after Truex was so nice to me last 2 weeks ago, I wasn't going to go away from him this week, especially. And I think Truex, actually, to tell you the truth, I think Truex should be the favorite of this race, co-favorite with Larson, if anything. Because last year he led 82 laps. He won Dover this year. Yes, he had a bad result at Darlington, but he led 145 laps before the accident. He's got 4 top 5s in his last 6 on the season with 2 wins. So he is the hottest driver right now in the sport. And it's a no-brainer. You have to take Truex as part of your package this week.
It is. And I think it says a lot that they have him at 7-1, even though both of his Nashville finishes are 22nd. But as you just said, he led 82 laps last year, and their only reason he didn't win was that late race caution. And they called him down pit road, and Chase Elliott didn't pit, and he ended up winning. It's like you just gave up the lead on a race that they should have known tires weren't degrading much last year, especially since it was a night race, which, oh, by the way, we're running a night race this weekend. So I feel like, as you said, that Darlington, the only reason he didn't win was the boy Chastain, Jonathan Boyd Chastain, he overthought it. In the end of that second stage, where he battled him, so just let him go. Why would you battle him? And he wrecked trying to battle him too hard. It was his own fault, or he probably would have won Darlington too. Sonoma wins, 7 top 8 finishes, his last 9 points pain races, 3 straight top 5s. Yeah, 7-1 was an absolute no-brainer to go his way. And for Kyle, yeah, he's finished second the last 2 weeks. He's got 2 Xfinity Series wins there. He's got 2 Truck Series wins there. However, he's finished 11th and 21st in Cup. And granted, last year he was part of that pit cycle at the end that he probably shouldn't have pitted. He led 54 laps, but he was 21st in Dover this year. It just doesn't – this track hasn't equated much to RCR yet. So for 7 – I thought it's a little high for him to be 7-1. So Truex was the no-play or the no-brainer. Kyle was more of a no-play for me.
Okay. Next up, we have Elliott, Byron, and Hamlin at 8-1. I took, well, again, Byron. As we said, we all took Byron. You and CJ took Hamlin. CJ, by the way, went with all 3 of these drivers. So with Elliott, we both agreed to stay away from Elliott. And to tell you the truth, I think the reason was, for me, I think it was simple. It's because I'm trying to, again, I'm not taking all these favorite drivers. And I just don't think Elliott's earned it. It doesn't mean he can't win. He probably has a good chance to win this week because he's the defending champ. And he was 3rd at Darlington. And you kind of get the feeling, all right, well, sooner or later he's going to win, right? That kind of thing. But I just don't think that he should be in this category, or at least I'll put it this way. I'm putting money on these drivers. I'm not going to put money on Elliott when I could put money on Truex and Byron.
Same thinking for me. I wouldn't be shocked if he won. I mean, he was 6th and 4th the 2 times he's qualified there. Obviously won last year. He was 3rd, as you said, at Darlington. But I just don't know. I just have a hunch, more or less, I guess, that out of all these favorites, him at 8-1 is going to be the one. I don't know why this guy's working on her.
Yeah, I was going to say it. I was going to reference that. What's going on there, man?
I have no idea what this guy's had 3 weeks to finish this, and he chooses right outside my window to start working on this section. He's Argentinian, so he doesn't speak real good English.
It sounds like you're in a garage, a NASCAR garage.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell is going on out my window right now? But anyways, I digress. Sorry about the noise this week. I just don't. Is he really going to win 2 of the first 3 years of this Nashville race, including
back
2
to back?
It just would be hard to do, and it just seems too cliche that he needs to win. It's going to happen in the race that he won at last year.
Why was he DQ'd? In 21, why was he DQ'd? Do you remember?
I can't remember why he was DQ'd that year. These next gen DQs come out. I can't remember.
If anybody remembers, while we're live,
let us know. Yeah. So I didn't trust him. Hamlin, if you remember right too, he was second in both stages last year. He led 114 laps from the pole.
Yeah.
He was also JGR was 1, 2, 3 when they all pit on that spot right there inside of 10 to go when he shouldn't have pit. He got a top 3 car that night, I feel like. So I don't know why it would change this year.
Yeah, I would take Hamlin over Truex. You have to take Hamlin over Elliott too.
Yep, exactly. So if I was taking Truex, I might as well go Hamlin. And Byron, it just feels he's probably the destined to win. He was third in 2021. He won Darlington this year. He was fourth in Dover in the spring. HMS is one of the last 2 and the only 2 Cup races there by 2 different drivers. Wouldn't it make kind of sense that Byron's the third driver? They can sweep it, go 1, 2, 3 straight years. Yep. Byron just seems to be the guy. And on intermediate tracks this season, so I'm talking about tracks a mile and a half or less, first, third, first, second, eighth. He's just been good. So I would put him 8-1 feels right for the number, and that's the way you've got to go with him for those numbers.
Yeah, and let's remember, too, that fourth at Dover, he led 193 laps in that race when he finished fourth. What do you remember what happened to him last year?
I can look.
Something must have happened, obviously.
Yeah, he had something happen to where he finished 35th.
So
did he? I think he got into the. He wrecked. I think. Remember, there was like issues with the rain. It kind of was like lightning and then sprinkling. I think he wrecked kind of early.
Okay. Was that race? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, because Hamlin. The reason I had to stay away from Hamlin though myself was I was just I don't know. 2 of his last 3 races, it's almost like Larson over his last 3 races, and runner-up Illinois, but I can definitely see why you would take Hamlin and Elliott. For me, I basically decided to take a few more drivers a little bit further down because, again, as I mentioned, you only have 1 driver after your 11-1 shot drivers, so. That's the difference between you and me. Now, speaking of those 11-1 drivers, Bell and Chastain. So I took Chastain. So did you. CJ and you took Bell. I just can't take Bell right now. He only has no top 5 since his win on dirt. That's an issue for me. Yes, he was top 10 in both races here, so that's good. 6th at Dover. That's fine. I just don't like the way he's going right now. But Chastain, 5th and 2nd. That's excellent. Led over 90 laps in both Dover and Darlington races this year. So, it's almost like Chastain, and we've been talking a lot about him on the show today, is like maybe overdue.
I agree. That's why I went with, top 3s both races. Should have won. Again, Darlington, remember, like I mentioned, he got in the Larson at the end there, but he restarted on the front row. He was second. I would say that day, Larson, Truex, and Chastain are the 3 best cars at Darlington. Dover, he was good there too. I'm sorry, he was 3rd and 2nd respectively at Dover the last 2 years. That's my fault. I said here, he was 3rd and 2nd. He's been good at Nashville. He was runner-up and 5th in his 2 tries there. Darlington, he should have won. So if you combine all that, it's like, yeah, he should win. And plus, I'll tie it in with Bell and why I didn't take.
Yeah, but shouldn't he have better odds than Bell? Not better odds, but shouldn't Bell be like a couple of points behind Chastain?
You would think so. I feel like they both have been in the same boat these last month.
Yes.
They went from 1-2 in points to kind of the same boats. They kind of paired them together, which is why I chose both, because Nashville in the first year, Chevrolet led 252 of 300 laps. Last year, Toyota led 253 of 300 laps. It seemed Ford has led 11 total laps there. And if you look at intermediate tracks this season, Ford has not really been at the top of their game. It just seems like it is a Toyota versus Chevy type of race. If you look at Darlington, Ford led 9 laps that day. You look at Dover, Ford led 8 laps that day. They've led 10 combined here. So it's like, if I'm going to punt on most of the Ford drivers, and I think it's going to be Chevrolet versus Toyota, which is why I took Bell, is I'm going to go the Gibbs guys up front. I'm going to go with the Hendrick guys up front. And I might as well take probably one of the better Chevrolet drivers in Chastain, who just a month ago was leading the points. I don't want to overlook the fact that he's just kind of had a rough stretch.
Yep.
That this was the points leader a month ago, and you're still getting him at 11-1, and he's good at these tracks. I would hope in this off week, Justin Marks, his team owner, may have sat him down and said, all right, old Ross, come back. If you need to make aggressive moves, and you happen to wreck people, you know what? I've got your back. I'm sorry that we got this because I know you're not doing it on purpose. I know you're not, because he's not the type of driver. He doesn't go out there and just wreck people. It's just he's overly aggressive. But as you've seen, that's what you got to be in this sport. The minute you kind of take that foot off a little bit, then comes the finishes of what we've seen of him lately.
Yeah.
29th, 22nd, 22nd, 10th. Let's let him get back to being Ross Chastain, and this is a great track for him to do that. So 11-1 plus Justin Marks. They'll also forget the fact that he's a Nashville guy. This is a track that means a lot to him because he was wanting at one time to move Trackhouse to downtown Nashville. That's where he wanted the team to be. He wanted it to be a big Nashville staple. People come in and out of the shop, kind of have glass up front. You can see him working on the cars, but when he got the Ganassi deal and he inherited their building and everything, he's like, that's too much to – now that I have a building, it'd be too much to undertake this building and move there. We'll operate out of that building. But this is a big race for him. So I think he probably would be okay with Chastain going out and winning this thing. So for 11-1, I had to go that direction.
This is a real good time to remind everybody that if you like the video, then press the like button. Very, very important. I don't know why. And I was telling this story to Jared Smola when we were doing the golf show yesterday. And I was giving him the whole, my own personal take on YouTube and the like button. And I remember when I first started watching YouTube videos, I didn't even know what it was about or what it was for. And so I never pressed it. I never really used it. And so, and even after a year, I hardly ever used it much. But then once, obviously, I became a more dialed-in channel owner and understood what it was about and so forth. Now, I have say I have 20, 25 channels that I'll visit and frequent. I use if I like those channels, no matter whether I like the video or not, I'm pressing the like button almost like a reference. So when I go back to the channel, I'll look at a video and go, did I see that from this channel? And I'll see the like button was I had to have seen it. It's almost like a bookmark. Like I bookmarked the thing. And I do that almost because, I do that specifically because I know it'll help the channel whether I liked the video or not. And I like the channel. I like what he does. So even if I don't like, and again, if I have to go back to, I hit the like button, so I must have seen this already. Now I can move on to another take from someone else. I don't have to look at that one again. That's how many channels I'll watch on YouTube. So yeah, again, that's just the way I do it. I'm not saying that you should just like every video, but fact is, if you don't really understand what that's about, that if you like, it's very important to us channel owners. Just as much as subscribing almost. It's very valuable because once you've subscribed, that's it. You're done. You don't have to press that button anymore. But the like button, yes. I mean, if you like the videos, definitely hit that. It's very important for us. And the more likes we get on these channels, the better YouTube will treat us and give us more exposure so we can get other viewers to watch the show that may not have ever even understood that the show was available. So, how about you? What do you do at YouTube with the likes and so forth?
I don't get on a whole lot.
Yeah, I know you don't visit it as much as I do.
My kids are the ones that are live on YouTube. But yeah, as much as I can.
You should ask them if they click the like button.
I'll have to ask them.
Yeah.
I know they watch a lot of it on our Roku through at home, where I at least can see what they're watching.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I can imagine. Yeah.
How they do through the TV, but who knows? They probably could.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, on TV. It's a little bit, you got to navigate, but you can do it. Okay, so Blaney's next at 12-1. And here we go again. Another situation where I'm the only one taking Blaney, and I get it. You mentioned the Fords, but the way I'm looking at it, third here last year, third Dover, ninth Darlington. He's doing better at tracks that whether it's Ford or his past history, has said it's just not your MO, doesn't fit. He's doing better now this year on those types of setups. So I just, once again, see when I see Blaney, when I see third last year, third and ninth Darlington, and you're one of the hottest drivers in the sport, I'm going, why am I only getting 12-1? So I'm taking it. If that's Chase Elliott, 6-1, 7-1.
Yeah, I was gonna say 6-1. Yep.
So I'm
The
just
only
taking
reason I didn't
advantage of
take
that.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, and I almost did. The only reason I didn't was the Ford factor. I thought when I'm gonna play catch up, I might as well just take the drivers I feel good about. He was my next driver on the list. That if I was gonna take, if anybody from Ford is gonna win, you got to think it's gonna be him. Hence why I think he's the top Ford driver odds wise, but. Yeah, I want to see more out of the Ford camp in general this weekend. Let's see what they can do. Granted, maybe the natural grip from a night race might help things too. We don't know that yet, so we'll see.
And it is his first race after a bad. I mean, we all know what happened to him at Sonoma, and we talked about this with Blaney before. You know, I don't know how he's going to handle that. I'm sure he was really upset, and nobody did it on purpose. But it's, the whole Mr. Nice Guy thing, whether they did it on purpose or not, you might have to let people know about how you feel because he lost. I mean, he went from being, stealing a top 10 to having a nothing, a zero, a zip. And boy, that's not good. If that happens in the playoffs, you're screwed. So I just want to see how he reacts from that because we've seen Blaney before. He could be a streaky driver. And if he gets like one bad race, what does he do the next race? And is this the start of him going into a dry spell again? So I'm interested to see how he reacts in this one. Maybe it helped him to have the week off. By the way, before we move on and wrap this up, the track in general, is this an okay race? Is this a boring race? What are we dealing with here?
Last year was better, the next gen, but not great. It's a tough one to pass on just because it's a concrete track. The resin over the PJ1, the resin has seemed to work there. So I'll be curious. The only thing with a night race is a lot of times night races with natural grip kind of become a single groove track, which Nashville has in the past been. So I'm just curious what this one is going to look like with that aspect involved.
Were they night races?
Last year ended up being a night race because it had all those lightning delays.
Okay.
The first year wasn't. It was a middle of the day race. So, I'll be curious. I think the next gen can spruce it up a little bit, but how much is going to be the question? Is how good can this race truly be?
And look, fingers crossed because this is one of those tracks you need to have in the series. It's Nashville. I mean, you have to have a race there. So let's hope it works out. Reddick is 16-1, Logano 18-1, and CJ was the only one to put money on either driver. He put money on Reddick. Have to ask him why. I don't see it.
Yeah.
Even the last couple of races, it's just not. He's going through a rough patch right now. And Logano, yes, he's got back-to-back third-place finishes, but they weren't very. It's almost like Kyle's, especially the last race. We know that they didn't really earn it, but I don't see Logano as, like you said, Ford. He's definitely not showing it this year at Dover or Darlington.
No, and he kind of backed his way into both, like you said, those third place finishes. It wasn't like he was there on merit. It was just kind of other people made mistakes, and he had the right pit call at the right time that got him there. But this track, as we said, it's rewarded dominance. I don't know why that's going to change for a manufacturer to be dominant. And if Ford has led 11 total laps there and has struggled on intermediates this year, I just don't see them magically appearing this year. So Blaney would be the Ford guy I would take, and maybe someone like a Kevin Harvick. Pair of Xfinity wins, 5th and 10th at his 2 Cup Series starts. He was runner-up at Darlington. The only thing is that runner-up at Darlington is his only top 5 in his last 9 races, too.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's kind of knocking down the door. Reddick, 18th in both Cup starts there, 7th in Dover, 22nd in Darlington. He's finished 22nd or worse in 3 of the last 4 races. He's probably rightly priced at 16-1, and
yes.
I wouldn't take him Wallace getting that next group, that was kind of the last line of defense and why I took this weekend. And in Nashville, yeah, he was 20th and 12th, but 12th for Bubba last year was pretty good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And now you look at on intermediate tracks this year, he's got 4 top 5 finishes in 5 tries. He's won Kansas. He seems to be good on tracks like this. And as that stat I go back to, Toyota led 253 of 300 laps last year. And we know he's been running better this year. And you get him for 22-1. If I'm going to go all in with that Toyota camp, I might as well add Bubba to it for 22-1. So that's why I went with him. And then the rest of the guys behind him, they just have not either at the track, on the season, or a little bit of both, have not kind of equated out to much.
Well, first off, yeah, I did put a few bucks on Harvick to get my money back because at this point, that's really all it's about. Because I'm with you. You just can't trust him to lead laps and win a race, but he could be in position if things work out. And if he's in position, maybe he gets lucky. Wallace was probably the one driver that I left off that I could have had money on. So I was almost there with Wallace. But I did put a few bucks on a few of the other drivers. And the one I like the most, and I'm a little bit surprised maybe that you didn't throw a couple of bucks this way, is Chris Buescher. I mean, he's 80-1. Yes, they had the bad results last year. But again, this is this year. And he's 9th at Dover, 10th at Darlington. And even Keselowski, 8th at Dover, 4th at Darlington. So they've got, they seem to work well at this this type of track. But Buescher's been a lot better than Keselowski lately, with 5 top 10s in his last 7 and 2 top 5s. So I'm getting 80-1. So I'm going to definitely, I put a few bucks on Buescher. I put a few bucks on Keselowski just because, again, both of them are doing well on these tracks. But I do like Buescher more than Keselowski, especially because I'm getting double the money. And then I just put a buck each on Stenhouse and Cindric. Again, I just keep thinking that Cindric is getting close. He's got to close a race, though, first. He was 7th last year here. He's 150-1. But Stenhouse, I'm a little bit more confident in. I like his results here, 6th and 21. And he's steady at Dover and Darlington. He's been very steady this year. So I think, anytime I'm going to get 100-1 on Stenhouse, if he has a little bit of prior experience in a positive way at a track, I'm going to do it because I still don't think Ricky Stenhouse is getting any credit so far.
No, and the RFK guys, I almost took too. The Ford thing, I just punted on all Fords. But Blaney and those two would be the two. Because if you remember, right, Grant, you can't really compare the two because of the size. But Bristol is a concrete track. And Buescher won Bristol last year. And Keselowski, remember, led a bunch of laps and blew a tire. He probably was going to win Bristol last year. So RFK can do it. But with Ford leading 11 total laps there, sure, I just struggle to think RFK, they're on the rise, but I think we all agree they're not there yet. Is this going to magically beat the Gibbs and Hendrick and Trackhouse cars on Sunday? But for their odds are definitely good to take. I did think it was interesting that Buescher, who arguably has better stats, is 80-1.
Yeah.
Keselowski was 45-1. That baffled me.
Yeah.
Buescher is a steal compared to those two. And Stenhouse, as you said, is a good pick. Is he really going to win? But he's a great play for a top 10. You can grab that one too because
good fantasy pick.
Here.
Yep.
He's a great fantasy pick. And even someone like Almirola, I looked at. Granted, it's a Ford. That's why I didn't pick him. And it'd be hard-pressed to find Almirola, of all people, to be the Ford that win. But he was on the pole for this race in 2021 and finished 4th. And he qualified 11th last year. And I feel like they're starting. Like, Stuart Haas has shown a little bit more promise. Granted, they just made a bunch of crew chief changes. There's an announcement coming tomorrow for Kevin Harvick's replacement for next year. You could kind of see the organization's trying to go in a positive forward direction. And this hasn't been a terrible track for him the 2 years he's been there. And you get him for 100-1. He could stay out. I mean, they're to the point where it's probably not – these guys are going to have to win, which I think is a different set of circumstances than last year because you had a bunch of parity and there were so many different winners. The points were closer. Now I think you look at – there's only a handful of guys that can probably point their way to the playoffs because we know that's going to happen. especially after now that Bush has 3 wins and Truex has 2 wins and Byron's got 3 wins. I don't think we're going to see 16 different regular season winners. So you're going to have some guys points their way in. But I think your Bowmans and Suarez and Ty Gibbs and those guys, those few little guys that are on the bubble can point in. But if you look behind them, there's a lot of guys that I feel like are going to be in a position that just go for the win. There's especially all these guys have been hit with penalties over the Chase Elliott's, Chase Briscoes, the Eric Jones, Austin Dillon.
True.
Those guys can, if they could stay on the lead lap, then what would stop them from another situation like last year where the caution comes, you know what? We're staying out. We got to win. I don't care that I've had 80 laps on this set of tires. We're staying out. And if you get enough of those guys stay out, that buffer between those cars and the cars that did stop could be enough to get you a win. So that's where this weekend gets interesting is guys like Almirola, Briscoe, Austin Dillon, Stenhouse, who's already won. They could gamble and say, you know what, we're going to do the complete opposite of what those guys do in front. And it might come out to be a win. So that's where some of these guys to gamble on which is just that, it's gambling. It's worth to throw a few bucks their way.
Yeah, and again, these next 2 weeks, who knows what's going to happen, especially next week with the street race, and then Atlanta is potentially a wild card based on the setup there. So yeah, and the other guy that maybe I was thinking about just keeping an eye on is Gibbs, because he's in Kurt's car, and Kurt was second last year, 8th in 21, and Gibbs has been okay at Darlington and Dover. Still don't think he's ready to win though. So
no, and he was 4th in the Xfinity race here last year.
Okay.
So he's been good there, but I'm with you. That's the only reason he was, other than Reddick, who we just talked about a little bit ago, they're the only 2 Toyotas I didn't take. I just don't feel like Gibbs is ready to necessarily win this race. So granted, it could happen, but Willie 35-1 was a little steep. So I thought if he was more 70-1, 60-1, I probably would have thrown a dollar or two his way. But 35-1 just wasn't enticing to take him.
Yeah, I don't know why he's been in that area for a while now. I don't know what's up with that.
No.
He hasn't shown or proved that he should be in the same zip code as Bowman, who never gets any breaks with the odds. No. So, all right, top 3 picks. Larson, Truex, and Byron.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. Those are the 3. And if I give a long shot, would be Bubba Wallace.
Bubba's a long shot. All right, yeah, same thing. I mean, Truex and Byron at the top, and top long shot for me would be Buescher.